Okay, everybody, welcome to Blockchain Chat. You know, if it's Wednesday, it is Blockchain Day officially in BBC. And want to welcome my beautiful partner in crime, Miss Alicia Shine. You want to say
Hello,
hello to
everyone.
everybody?
Hello.
And we have a special guest today joining us. So first of all, I got to give a big shout out to Anita Calloway, who has been helping us secure these guests. And these guests are coming from some of the top Blacks in blockchain. So we're fortunate to have one of them here tonight, Mr. Leroy Forbes Jr. Woo!
Oh, stop it, stop
Yeah.
it. Hi, everyone.
Um, so before we really start talking with Leroy, I want to remind everyone that we are getting ready for Atlanta 2020. That's going to be happening February 16th and 17th. In Atlanta, I'm encouraging you to at least get your hotel rooms now before they're all booked out. And also in the next couple of weeks, consider getting your flight as well before the prices go up. So we know how those things are. The second thing is, and Leroy, I'd love to have this conversation with you as well as you introduce yourself. So within Black Blockchain Consultants, we focus on four things. Number one are blockchain jobs that are available, just introducing people to that. Number two are blockchain-based businesses that we can start, because I'm a big proponent of entrepreneurship and ownership. Number three is investing in the blockchain, whether you're investing your money or your time into a project. And then number four is generational wealth. So this is estimated to be a $3.1 trillion industry. And we, of course, want to get our piece of that pie. Not necessarily saying that everyone's going to be a full-time entrepreneur. You could stay with your Fortune 500 company and do something on the side, you know, whatever you choose to do. But I had a very interesting conversation, Talisha, with a new member of BBC, and he reminded me of some things that I was saying in the early part of 2019 that I kind of stopped saying, and now I realize, okay, maybe I need to once a month reiterate certain things. The first is he asked me the question of, you know, where do I start with this whole blockchain thing? And I said, well, you can choose the job route or you can choose the entrepreneurial route. And one of the things that I think of is choosing one of three things. Choose either an industry that you want to participate in. Number two is choosing a use case and becoming really, really great at understanding that use case. So like Eric Spence is the titan of tokenization, as we know. Or the number three is choosing a platform like Hyperledger Fabric or something like that that you really want to become involved with and going deep with that platform. And then the second question that the person asked me was, you know, well, he mentioned cryptocurrency and investing in crypto. And I wanted to reiterate that you can invest in crypto and that's perfectly fine. In fact, I saw an article today forecasting that Bitcoin is going up to $20,000 in 2020. I don't even know. However, I want to make sure that people understand this. If you invest in the crypto of the platform and that company is sold to Facebook, Microsoft, Google, you will not get a piece of the $1 billion that Facebook purchases that company for. It's always been my opinion that a lot of these blockchain platforms are going to be sold to these large multinational companies. The way that you can actually get a piece of that pie is to be a part owner in the stock of those organizations, of those companies, of those platforms, and not just the crypto holders. So we've got a lot of new people here, and I wanted to make sure that I talked about those two things, and I'm going to try my best every month to have a time where I kind of reintroduce that. But with that, I kind of want to open up the platform to Leroy, first of all, to introduce yourself, who you are. You're a certified Bitcoin professional. You're host of Block Talk podcast, so we want to hear about that. You're also a freelance writer, and you're an entrepreneur at heart. So I want you to introduce yourself, and then anything that you're doing, and also piggyback on a little bit of what I've said as well, because I think that you'll have an interesting take on what I've just said and outlined for the family.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Leroy Forbes Jr. As you stated before, I have the cryptocurrency certification, the C4 certification. And in about, I think it was early 2018, I decided to start an educational podcast to kind of teach people about blockchain and crypto, but not all of without the technical jargon, without the headlines and the fanfare and all of the wondrous things, the scams, the scandals, the billionaires. I wanted people to actually understand what this stuff is, how it works, what it does, and how we can use it going forward. And there are a lot of platforms. I saw that there were a lot of YouTubers, a lot of bloggers, that shared some relevant information, but at the time it wasn't I had two problems with it. So the information wasn't easy to digest for the average person, and there was a lack of representation in a lot of the influencers, a lot of the academics, a lot of the professionals in the field. So I felt that reaching especially a Black audience, for me, because I'm from the Bahamas, came to America to go to school, live here now, all that good stuff. But speaking directly to a Black audience was super important to me. And one of my inspirations right now, because I've been relatively inactive in the field, a lot of moves in my personal life happened over the past year, but Bitcoin Day, Isaiah Jackson's book, Bitcoin in Black America, oh man, that lit a fire that I forgot that fire was there. But it's to anyone who's here, definitely check out that book. I highly recommend it, Bitcoin in Black America. So that's what kind of led me to the podcasting section of it, because I wanted to teach, but the medium that you use to teach, I found was really important. You could make a blog, but are people actually going to take the time to read it and fully digest and understand? You can do videos, but then people, they're not going to fully watch it, and it takes a lot of time. So I figured the podcast, that audio was a good medium. Piggybacking off of one of the things you said earlier about finding your spot, what you want to do in blockchain when you want to get involved. I feel that the simplest route every time, hands down, is taking what you do already and finding out where that fits in the blockchain field overall. So for instance, I'm in digital marketing currently. I have a marketing agency. Now, if I was brand new to all things blockchain, all things Bitcoin, whatever it is, piqued your interest, the easiest way for me to transition into that was to see if there were any marketing jobs or marketing opportunities for companies that are already in the field, companies that are already doing things in blockchain and in cryptocurrency. And this applies across multiple fields. You can have it in health, you can have it in technology, you can have it in marketing, education, all of these. So finding your niche or finding your place, your spot in the field, it's all a matter of finding yourself and then seeing where you fit in that, knowing what you do, what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and then just applying it to the field.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because some people, we've had long discussions about different types of jobs and opportunities that are available. Some people have been in their niche, their industry for 2 decades, and they could go and go to a platform and say, hey, I'll be on your board of advisors because I know this niche. You guys know, cryptography, for example, or the Solidity language, but you don't know nursing like I know nursing or whatever. So yeah, so you're absolutely right. That is a way for you to break in. And then, you know, I'll open it up for Talisha or Eric, because I know that they will have questions for you as well. And I think overall tonight is just going to be a great chat. Oh, and this is the last blockchain chat of the year.
Oh,
Because
wow.
next week is Christmas. The following week is New Year. Cherie will be getting tipsy somewhere. But not only that, okay, so not only that, we're entering a new decade as well. And I thought about it as I was prepping for this tonight. You know, this is going to be the decade of blockchain, IoT, robotics, AI, you know, really pushing forward. So with that, you know, Talisha or Eric, you guys can jump in.
I definitely agree with Leroy. As always, I think I talk about the business of blockchain much more than I talk about the technology. And although I love the tech part, I am the tech person. I love the back end. I'm a nuts and bolts kind of person. That really is the last part of it, in the sense of, you know, the tech by itself is not going to do anything. It's all the business that wraps around it. So when people try to start something, it's like, again, you have to have a framework to place that piece of technology into. You just don't kind of usurp it and build something around it. You literally insert it into somewhere. So I do appreciate that you had that comment that, you know, you start with where you are and you find those gaps, because those gaps can be filled in many different ways. And that's where the technology can be applicable. And even in a different way, I think we're going to see, we've just kind of surpassed the decade of the growth of Bitcoin. You know, we just kind of introduced it in the 2010s. So now that we go to the 2020s, what do we see now is infrastructure support, because now it's like, okay, that was cute, that was good, but the but is now going to be answered, I think, in the roaring 20s that we're kind of heading into. I see you smiling, Eric.
I'm just listening to you. That's it.
Yeah, whatever. He's just trying to be a tech person. I keep trying to tell him he doesn't need to be a tech person.
She does keep saying that to me all the time, and I'm like, oh, I do. But okay, I gotta ask you, Leroy, I gotta ask you this, all right? Because obviously you've been here, you know, and you're fully immersed too from the investing side. So listen, everyone, full disclaimer, it's not financial advice at all. So don't go blaming anybody on this call.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah, so that's it. So
we have a disclaimer for that.
Don't act like you didn't hear that. That's out there. Now, okay, I do have to say this, and many of us, I know Cherie and myself, we kind of entered in first through that investment portal before we were opened up to the wide world of blockchain, and have now fallen all the way down the rabbit hole, you know, to here we are right now. Now, let me just say this, okay? I remember when the drumbeat of, oh, the institutions are coming, it was all that it was a great thing. But now, you know exactly where I'm going with this. Now people are looking at it, they're going, oh, well, wait a minute. Is that really a great thing? Because now you're bringing in all of those complex financial instruments, and now we have Bitcoin futures, and now there's like, it seems like it's—
and don't forget the new laws every week.
Yes.
Okay,
don't forget the new laws every
today.
Right. So I really want to get your take on that. Like, how do you feel, especially when you look at like a bat, you know, coming in? And it's funny because everyone kept talking, oh, this is going to be a great thing for Bitcoin. This is going to, you know, cause the price to skyrocket. Then we're like, oh, wait a minute. And it went the opposite direction. So I just want to get your take on it. Like, what do you think?
My stance on it now is the same stance I've had from like 2017. To be frank, I hate it, but I see it as a necessary evil for the advancement of the field, for the advancement of the technology, because you can have thousands of super inspired, like really bold, really brave programmers who are going out, trying new things, testing out these new programs. But all of these things take money and they take time. And when you talk about mass adoption or expansion or evolution or advancement in the technology, you're going to need a bag. You're gonna need that bag to get it done.
Interesting.
So I see institutional investment. I see big money, big corporation coming into it as a necessary evil. When you expect it, when you kind of see it coming, you in a way anticipate what they're gonna do, because they play by the same playbook. They do the exact same plays all the time. They're not creatures of change.
Mm-hmm.
So when they come in, you know they're coming to dominate. You know they're coming to control, but they can't outright control it. So what they're going to do is get the government to kind of twist this law around, and you need a money license to do that now, even though we don't technically count it as money. Oh wait, you need to file taxes on that, even though the IRS classifies it as property, the SEC classifies it as what, a currency, the FTC classifies it as a commodity. So the government can't even decide what it is.
True.
But it's a part of the motions. It's how these things work, and you just have to roll with the punches. Sometimes you just got to take one to the chin.
Okay.
I have another question for you with regard to just kind of piggybacking off of that. Since we do have all the legislation, we have multiple bodies classifying it in various different ways, and just not able to really wrap our heads around what we're going to do. But we have other countries, specifically the Caribbean, the continent of Africa, doing really amazing things at this point, and literally kind of superseding us at this point. So how do you feel like the US can gain traction with having kind of being strap held by our legislation body?
That's going to be tough, because once politics gets involved in it, then it just gets super overly complicated. Then you have to look at the laws that are going to be in place, the laws that these businesses that have been running for years now have to completely change their infrastructure to abide by. It's an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle, because the advantage that a lot of the other places have, like the Caribbean, for instance, companies like BIT, you have, what was it? What is Sinclair Skinner's company over in Africa, in Zimbabwe? I forget. Bitmari, that's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ryan.
So
thanks, Ryan.
when you go to countries, I'll use the Caribbean and Africa because those are the easiest examples, and you see a lot of progress there. When you go to these countries that, not really third world countries, but lesser developed countries, than countries like, say, the US or large forces in the world, they, in a sense, they have less to lose by taking that gamble, because it is a gamble. Realistically, we feel certain because we study the stuff, and we feel certain that, okay, this is going to work out, this is how it's going to play out, but there's no certainty in it. So it's always going to be a gamble. So when you have an entire country, an entire government willing to take that risk, willing to go out on that limb and say, hey, look, I mean, we got to work with what we got. And this sounds good. On paper, it looks good. We have the people going over it. It seems like it'll be profitable. Let's give it a shot. So them giving it that oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, you not only have that, but you have, for example, Cardano Foundation and some of these other European, I'm just going to say, companies that are seeing Africa as the next frontier, and cryptocurrency and blockchain as a way of building the infrastructure, a digital infrastructure on the continent. The other big thing is you do have a major government player that is serious about blockchain, and that's China. They have really, I mean, they have done what the United States did 50 years ago with the internet. The United States was critical in the creation of the internet, but for whatever reason, they just, I will say the administrations, and this is Democrat and Republican, they just don't seem to be as vested in the next 200 years as the Chinese are. And it's a little disheartening, you know, it's a little disheartening because I wish that they were. They're putting little bits of dribbles in there because I write grants for a living. So I see that, but nowhere near the amount of money and prep, you know, preparatory with the kids in schools and things like that the Chinese are doing.
And I think another, going off of that as well, because China is China. Like China is China. And one advantage that they have, especially going forward in this new information digital age, one advantage that they have is they operate is like one unit. They operate as a whole.
Yeah.
So they're not going to have, say, this interested party telling you to twist this law so these groups can benefit and this interested. No, it's China. It's one front. We're all going with this. So when they make these moves and they make these advancements, like even with the whole 5G thing that's going on right now, that's such a big deal for some reason. China has been working on this from like, who knows when. And we're just seeing some like starter advancements here in the US. And it's just how they move. They have the benefit of a unified priority. And that's the improvement of China overall. Not specific parties in China, not specific companies in China, but China as a whole.
Yeah.
Since they move like that, they're able to get that stuff done.
Yeah, I mean, so I've done some writing for some people who, you know, are Chinese or are doing business in China, to the point where they'll have kids and they're like, okay, you're studying this, you're studying this, you're studying this. Well, there's a lot of freedoms we have in the United States that they don't have in China, but on the other hand, they are very, very organized. And you know, and then bringing this back to us, not just in America, but I want to talk about Black America here. One of the things we've been talking about is how to organize ourselves, you know. So I've been saying for the past year and a half since the group has been started, and these two have heard it like 80 million times, if there were 10,000 of us that got together and put $100 in each, that's $1 million. We could start funding our own companies, you know, getting past beta to the point where we could, you know, get bigger VCs and things like that interested in us. So the question then becomes, I think is it Farrakhan that says, how do we become a nation within a nation? Or, you know, or the Powernomics, you know, Dr. Claude Anderson or whatever, those types of philosophies. And I will admit I'm not super well read on all of that, but just logically, how do we take 10,000 of us as Black people and say, you know what, we want to get some real piece of the pie within blockchain, so that we can really move the ball forward within Black America. I'm opening that up to the entire panel.
Yes, we have heard that, and there is a viability in that. And I think, again, this is where the Powernomics is coming again, because we're shifting everything very quickly. At this point, we have some historical basis of how money changes and how our systems change, but now we're doing it very, I would say, exponential growth. And how do we fit now is becoming the issue. And as most people see, if we're creating new currency or a new digital asset, how do we now get to participate, because we have been left behind before and totally subjugated to just getting whatever was given to us. And at this point, this is a creation time frame for us, and how we need to leverage that. And I'd be really curious of, what do you believe from the standpoint of cryptocurrency being that vehicle for us to do that? That's a question for you, Leroy.
So the role crypto could play in that. I see, ideally, it's the potential for a complete separation from the financial system that we have now, from the financial system that for years has excluded us from a lot of the benefits that some of our counterparts have been having for decades, if not centuries. One example that I have, and I'm going to keep going back to Bitcoin Zay, because he's like my go-to guy in most things crypto, realistically. But he started the blockchain, which is that company, I think, for sourcing Black investors as well as Black businesses and getting those investments in, and just keeping the money circulating through Black hands, Black businesses, Black entrepreneurs, and also affording them that opportunity to build up these businesses and get funds and get opportunities to actually start these things that they wouldn't get at the bank that's probably denied them the business loan that they applied for 3, 4, 5 different times because the credit score didn't exactly line up. So I see that separation helping to build not just confidence, but long-lasting wealth, the generational wealth. It's when the money stays in the same hands and they circulate and it grows and it just expands. And companies and ideas like that they don't just form a new company or help a random entrepreneur or a random business to just get started. It builds a community. It builds a community, because then you don't just have one person giving another person money. You have a mentor coming in and offering not just money, but advice. You have a mentor coming in and showing you what works for him or her and how you can apply it to your business or your ventures or what you're working on now. So crypto, being outside of the current financial system, outside of the credit score system that we use now for most things in the United States, I see that being a crucial point in us actually starting to build wealth.
Okay. Cool. So one of the things that Talisha mentioned was about the roaring 20s, so Leroy, what's your forecast over the next decade? Where do you see things headed? That's part one. And then part two is, of course, any advice you have for the family with regards to how we look at it, take advantage of it, things like that.
Where do I see it going is if you asked me this 10 years ago, I would have had a better idea. But right now, looking at how fast technology is actually advancing and how we've gotten to the point where technology actually can advance itself without our intervention, it's going to be wild. It's going to be.
You're saying iRobot is here?
I mean, we're halfway to Skynet, to be honest, but
that's actually pretty scary. Don't say Skynet.
I mean, if we're gonna be real, we are pretty close to Skynet already, and it's not unrealistic to see a world with full of robots hovering. We have the self-driving cars, like those things that they were predicting in like the 90s for way out in the future, like self-driving cars, the smart homes, you just swipe one pad and control everything. We have that. You can get that in Walmart. That's where we're at now. So looking at how much technology can advance in the next 10 years, AI is going to be insane. Mm-hmm. Machine learning is going to be insane. Mm-hmm. Blockchain is going to be insane. And it's going to be a free-for-all. And one big thing I think we're going to see in the next 10 years is, and I'm not wishing this, but I have to objectively look at it. We're going to see, from my perspective, a shift in global power. We're going to see a shift in global power.
I believe that.
And tech is going to be a huge part of that.
Well, everybody owes their money. So whoever is owed money, really are the ones that are in control. So yeah, so you're right about that. Definitely.
I'm sorry. Can I offer a bit of counter perspective. Shall I say this?
I love it. A debate. Here we go.
And I do see this. Okay, I see it too. However, I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm, like a techno utopian. That always we will always have this better result. I mean, and part of that for me is I always begin to merge everything with human nature itself. It's just like all of the platforms that we look at, and where a person created it, I don't want to say with a singular mindset, but they never saw some of the ways in which humanity leveraged that platform. And that is something too that always makes me pause when I think about it going forward. I saw something the other day just recently, and I had no idea, about this. And I'll just be honest with you. And listen, I'm not a Luddite. I mean, I'm not in no way, shape, or form, but I am not a fan of, Alexa, any of those things. I won't do it.
You don't like getting spied on?
No.
You don't like getting spied on?
No, I won't do it. Listen, let me tell you, I saw something the other day, and it was, with the Ring doorbell system. And inside their houses, and that everyone's hacking them. So people are hacking them, and you got to think. And first of all, I thought everyone pretty much kept their surveillance on the exterior. I didn't know they had them all inside their house, which was kind of like, what were you thinking doing that?
Yeah, they don't think that far.
You're back in your bed, so that kind of stuff. And then they're getting hacked, and then they're getting. Some people are like, they're giving out these ransoms for whatever, and we saw you here, and who knows? So I guess that's where I'm at, is as we do trudge forward, like without question, we are moving towards this. That's without a doubt. But I guess I just more so try to undergird it with, we should have learned over the past 10 years that we have to account for human nature behaving the way it is going to. You know what I mean? And that's what I do not think that over the last, probably 10 to 15 years, most technologists haven't done the best job at. So,
have you watched this show called Black Mirror?
Yes. Quite a bit.
Yeah. That's what I have in mind when I think of like where it can go. So
what is Black Mirror? I don't know that.
Oh, okay. So
I don't watch a lot of TV, so sorry.
This is something you should definitely check out. Long story short, Black Mirror is, the idea behind it is the technology of the future. They have these wonderful ideas about what technology can do and where we can go with technology. But each episode emphasizes how human nature can warp the purpose or the uses of the technology.
That makes sense.
Outside of its initial purpose.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to piggyback off what Eric said and say, every time anything is introduced, but we're talking technology right now, there's always a balance between capitalism to its core and survival to its core. So the haves and the have-nots. And you can't have the balance tipped one way too much or the other way too much. Even in a place like China that's communist, or these communist places, there's capitalism everywhere, So I think each of our families, each of us individually and each of our families need to think about technology and how human nature, as you were saying, Leroy, plays into it, but it plays into it, really in multiple fronts. The other thing that I wrote down is, over the next decade, the way that we interact with technology and the jobs that we're going to have are going to change. And if you were under the age of 50, or if you're going to be working for more, I would say the next 15 years or more, there's a lot of great articles and a lot of great things on YouTube about things you can do to prepare for the next set of jobs that are coming. And please help your kids prepare for it as well, because they're really being trained for jobs that don't exist today. And the biggest jobs that will be created are the jobs that, all about thinking, strategic, problem solving, things like that. And if you are not able to do that, you're either going to suffer, because this country is moving into the haves and have-nots, and Sharia intends to be a have. So, good luck, right? I'm just saying that to everybody right now. So, but it's going to be people who can solve problems. If you're doing any kind of a repetitive task, in the next 10 years, your job is most likely going to be phased out. I mean, maybe you have a 10% chance of having your job saved. But other than that, you have to have some sort of strategic skills in order to make it in this country. So.
But can I just add one thing to that, Sri? Because, and Talisha always says this all the time about, especially about, really communicating the why and the how, and whenever there's any kind of creation of any kind of technology at the very interim of it. I guess I'm saying this, and I'm going, do we believe, and I'm just asking this just openly of all of us, do we believe that people have learned enough, that to the point where they're going, okay, we get it now. So now as we begin to create and integrate new technology, we're going to do it in a way that's much more human focused, much more centered to understand that. Like, for instance, like when we talk about diversity, and I think that we've brought it up even on one of our blockchain chats about how with the facial recognition scanners, they didn't do any Black people, and and right, and then you get the whole blowback from them. I guess I'm wondering, do we think that people have learned enough now that now going forward they're going to change their ways and do it, and we will have products that are better?
I feel yes and no. I feel that I feel that the majority of the people that have learned or that do approach it with that mindset now are the younger people. I feel that in most cases, I'm not saying this is across the board, obviously, but in a lot of cases, you'll find that the older generation, the vanguard, the original, they tend to stick to their guns, to put it frankly. They stick to what they know. They stick to what they know has worked for them before, despite whatever advancements, despite whatever age you live in. Hey, it's worked before, it's going to work now. So I say no in that sense, seeing as they do still kind of oversee a lot of the fields that we're looking at. But the new guard coming in, I see a lot of potential, because you have new generations now with a completely different outlook on business and human interaction and just our interaction with the world around us.
I agree.
So you have a more socially conscious generation coming up. You have a more human focused, more human centric generation coming up. So immediately we won't see it. I do see the shift happening.
So I'll throw a monkey wrench in. I'll be like Eric. I'll throw a monkey wrench into this. There's a guy named Charles Payne, I think is his name. He's on Fox Business, and he said a saying many years ago that now I'm starting to understand the shift. He said, when you're young, you're typically, he was talking about politics, you're typically a liberal because you have a heart. And as you get older, you tend to change to conservative because you have a brain. And again, this is not a political thing. This is just, I wonder if young people today, as they become older, are going to shift from, we want to save the world, we want to do something big, we want to be Elon Musk, to we want to preserve we want to, you know, keep the status quo. And the only reason I mention that is because every young generation previously has gone through this. So whether it was the World War II generation, or, you know, the baby boomer generation, or I'm Gen X, you know, the older I'm getting, I'm starting to shift. So I think that people overestimate what millennials and Gen Zers are going to do. And I personally, I'll be dead in my grave most likely by the time Gen Z gets to 60. But it would be really interesting to have that crystal ball. I'm not so certain that they're going to be I don't think that history is going to change as much as we're, you know.
I think I'll be Barbara. I'll be the Barbara Cochran of this. So knowing millennials and Gen Z, the one thing that they have that we never had is a concern that the planet might not be here.
Fact.
They have a fear of not living because something bad is going to happen to them. They live with imminent danger. As a baby boomers and Gen Z person, X-Y person, I don't have that imminent danger of being shot at school, or that the planet blowing up, or that there's so much pollution that I can't go outside, or that we're going to run out of medicine or run out of clean water. Never came into my mind. I have a 17-year-old in my household who has these kind of talks like, well, what if the ocean becomes polluted? Where will we get new water from? Never be a question that I would pose to anyone. I wouldn't think that. You know what I'm saying? Like, where will we get water? There's water. You have this, I would say, naivete that, you know, water is just water. It comes, it's just there. But she's concerned that there's not going to be enough water for her, let alone.
That is interesting. Okay.
So I'm saying they have a different, that's the one thing, that critical piece of survival. So their business ethics and their consumerism really now plays, like, it tugs at that. Like, if I make this purchase of a water bottle, where does it go? They instantly think about that, where we thought nothing of drinking cans and throwing them out the, you know, station wagon window. That's just the way it was. You know, we didn't care about seatbelts. We didn't care about a whole lot of things because we didn't have imminent danger. And I think this generation specifically, it's talked about, they see it. It's not something that's just like, oh, that just happens over there. It's in their purview because it's resonating very critically to them. And so they understand that they have to build sustainable systems, because now it's woven into, like, if we're going to stay here, if I'm going to be able to live till I'm 60, something has to be here for me to be 60. So that's the only thing. I think that's the difference between our generations and theirs.
Very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I accept that.
I completely agree with that. So I'm a millennial myself. So my view of it has always been, I mean, yeah, historically, there has been that shift from liberal to conservative as you get older. But looking at the time we're living in now, that really that variable in itself changes the whole playing field. Because previously it was more routine. Previously, it was more routine. You did have large world events like the World War and everything, but it was pretty cut and dry. You go to school, get a job, work till your pension, and you're good. So the mindset that was carried over was passed down from generation to generation to generation for a while. Now we've reached this crux in human history where a lot is going on at one time. With us, with the planet, with technology, with our tools, with everything. And a lot of things that could have been just pushed to the side or ignored can't be ignored. A lot of hearsay and myths are now facts that we have to argue on a daily basis that we're concerned about, like the climate change, like all of these other issues, like gun violence, like all of these new things that have come up. So I think the generation coming up, it's going to stick with them in those formative years, because the previous formative years were just, oh, I just want to be rebellious because I don't want to listen to my parents, this and that. And then you grow out of it and you become your parents. But now it's like, I can't become you because I'm probably not going to make it to your age. We got to do something different now. We have to. It's not that we should, we have to.
Exactly.
It's a necessity for survival now. So with that mindset coming up from, say, 5, 6, 7 years old, when you're 7 years old and your school is training you for a school shooting, you're going to grow up different. You're going to grow up with a completely different mindset. So from that perspective, I feel that mine and the younger generation, we're going to, I'm not going to say stick because there are some conservatives, and liberal or conservative, facts are facts.
Yeah.
It's just how you approach those facts, what you choose to do with those. So I feel like the facts that we have now, as opposed to back then when cigarettes were healthy, everyone's doing it, so it has to be good, all this stuff that you're eating, it's wonderful, you have to eat this much per day, and you're going to, like, we know better now. We know that those aren't the facts of our age. So with the facts that we have now, we're going to have different adult lives. We're going to have to move differently. We're going to have to think differently. We're going to have to act differently to survive.
Interesting. Okay. Well, we have 10 minutes left, and what I'd like to do for the last 10 minutes is kind of talk practically in terms of practical things that we can leave the family with as we head into 2020. Whether it's advice on some things to study, maybe some podcasts to listen to, including Leroy's podcast, which he can talk about. I kind of feel like, we've talked kind of in theory and esoteric tonight. I did start off with some practical advice of things that you should consider with regards to, getting blockchain jobs or blockchain-based businesses. But I want to end tonight on a practical level as well. So I'm going to open it up to anybody because I know that is a tall order here. But practical advice of things that we should consider doing, either prepping over the next 2 weeks for 2020, or as we're heading into 2020, what are some of the things that the family should be doing?
Reading. And this can't be stressed enough because not enough people do it. And it's like, most of your answers can come from there. When you read, when you do your own research, you're teaching yourself how to think. You're not just reading someone else's ideas. You're taking their ideas, processing them yourself, and you're learning how to think through problems. So you're seeing examples of how other people did it. They're giving you their walkthrough, they're writing down, whatever it is. Reading is the key to everything, reading and doing your own research. So speaking practically, I would say for families, just start by a basic book. Start with, what's his name? The Tapscott, Don Tapscott. Anyway, the book is called Blockchain Revolution. Start there. It's a really simple book. It breaks down blockchain. It breaks down how it started, how it works, all of these things. And Bitcoin in Black America. I'm going to plug that out until we finish this. But yeah, start with those and just go online. Look up something. We have the internet. Like, just go online. You have a question, type it in Google, and then go from there. Find some reputable sources. Find one YouTuber, or find one blog, or one person on Instagram or Facebook, whatever you use, that you like, that seems kind of interesting, and then build on from there. Even if they're completely wrong, they could just be saying whatever. They could be completely wrong. But if you get an idea from there, you have a starting point. The hardest part I feel is finding that starting point, because a lot of people ask me, like, hey, like the other day, I had my grandfather with me on WhatsApp, and he had asked me, hey, can you send me some information about the Bitcoin in my P.O. box? I'm like, what do you want to know about it? That was the first thing. Don't
sleep on the P.O. box now.
And he's back home, back in the Bahamas. But So I was like, well, what do you want to know? He's like, I want to know how to get involved. I said, okay, involved how? Like, do you want to invest? Do you want to learn about it? You just want to, like, what do you want to do? And he had trouble articulating what it was exactly that he wanted. So finding that starting point, I feel, is the most difficult part. And I say just jump. You can find you can find your favorite podcast. You can find some guy who just started yesterday and has no idea what he's talking about. But you're going to have that baseline to start with, and then you can build on from there. Twitter, while it seems like just a playful social media, Twitter is so informative.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, we're going to do a blockchain chat sometime next year about the top blockchain people to follow on Twitter. I keep pushing it back because we keep having great interviewees on Wednesdays, but I definitely have that on my list. Yeah, so great. Eric, practical advice, the titan of tokenization himself.
Oh, that definitely. Well, see, now that you said that, I would say, hey, you need to study and learn about tokenization. This thing is going to take over and completely transform finance. So put it into your Google alert and read about it. Like, you will be amazed at, the application of blockchain, of the ability that tokenization of assets has to completely change the way finance has always happened, and to be able to democratize it and to make it much more accessible for everyone. I mean, that's part of our goal. That's some of the things that we really do trumpet that a lot. And for that to come along now during this time in our lifetime, I think it's just an amazing opportunity. But I do echo what Leroy said. Read. Take this time to. I know I tend to take this time to really catch up on a lot of reading, and those books you talked about. Yes, absolutely, those are great, fantastic. I love Zay's book. I love how he broke things out in a very simplistic way. It's fantastic. So yes, that's what I would echo the same thing. Read, yes. Learn
so I'm going to piggyback off of Eric for a second. In preparing for the February conference, I did research. So our conference in February is going to focus on 3 areas where we can dominate as a people and individually. Smart contracts is one, data management is the second, and the third is tokenization. And in my research, I discovered by 2024, I'm going to get this right here, by 2024, the tokenization asset market is forecasted to be $24 trillion. I'm sorry, by 2027. Sorry, by 2027, $24 trillion in assets is going to be going through tokenization. So we're going to have an in-depth conversation about how we can be owners and get jobs within that piece of the pie. So, I'm going to leave it there and toss it over to Talisha. Piece of practical advice that you have.
Practical advice. As a content curator for BBC, I think the best place to go, you're on Facebook. Do something useful with yourself and just head on over there. You can search for anything. You can search or you can just browse. I think that's the one thing, again, just start. There's enough little content there for you to pick and choose what you want. Click on something that's interesting. It's always going to take you somewhere else. Joining our, inner circle to get some more discussion, some more meat to that bone kind of thing is always going to be, but you can toggle back and forth because we kind of proliferate both of those with that information. But it is starting to just educate yourself and don't feel overwhelmed like you have to know everything. Just go vocabulary, the top, 100 words of blockchain. Start there just so that you're familiar with the term so that you don't have to go back and forth and say, what's that mean? What's that mean? And then just read an article a day. Make it something that you do as your habit. People always come up with, New Year's resolutions. Maybe take, one of those resolutions. I'm going to read a blockchain-centric article a day. That may be something
Mm-hmm.
that you do, and have accountability partner and say, read this with me and we can discuss it, or bring it to us. I always say, like, I have a post right now about how can we help you in the BBC? What do you want to learn in 2020? Feel free to, put that in the thread. Like, what do you want to learn? We'll help you. So I always say, this is the Jerry Maguire moment. Help me, help you, help me. That's what we're here for. And that's what you need to use us for.
Right, right. So I'm going to give two pieces of practical advice. Number one, everyone has said read, which I think is very important. I added a little extra to that, which is set up your Google alerts with blockchain in it, or blockchain in your industry. Because sometimes we'll forget to go and read our article a day. However, if it's in your email, then at least you'll see it. And while you're, sitting on the throne, I'll put that in quotes, or, or taking the train, or waiting for your kid in the parent pickup line, or whatever it is, that's a great way for you to scroll through your emails and say, oh yeah, the information is fed to you. So that's number one. The second thing is something that I used to say all the time. I'm going to reintroduce it, which is pick a major. Once you read, I'm a big fan of reading. However, some of us read and we never act. And I want to make sure that you are reading, but that you're also acting as well. And one of the biggest things that you can do is select a major. So the analogy that I give is, if you've ever been to college, your freshman and sophomore year, you study general studies, but in junior year, they have you do what? Pick a major, pick a specialization, and go deep with that, whether it's tokenization of assets, whether it's smart contracts, data management in healthcare, data management in education, whether it's a platform, whatever it is, the greatest thing that you can do in 2020 is pick a major, because you've only got a couple of years to really get yourself grounded so much in that major or that specialization that by the time mass adoption happens, people are searching for you. You've only got a couple of years. So let's make this count. And don't be afraid thinking, oh, I have to choose everything. No, the best thing you can do is be a specialist. If you needed heart surgery today, would you go to a general practitioner, or are you gonna go to the best heart surgeon at Johns Hopkins, or whatever medical facility is near you? You want to think of yourself as being a heart surgeon as well, with regard to some area of blockchain where people would be more than happy to give you 6 figures for what you know, because you are the best in the industry. So with that, does anybody else have any final comments?
Ask questions.
You have questions?
Every question.
Ask questions. Okay.
Ask every question. There are no dumb questions. There are no, the community is here to help. The community wants to answer these questions. Anything at all that comes up as you go through the journey, anything that's confusing, it feels overwhelming, just reach out to anyone in the community. I almost guarantee they'll gladly help you solve it.
Yeah, I mean, the community is so small, whether you're reaching out to other Black people or white people or whomever, people are very, very responsive because the community is still so small. So, thank you so much to all of you. Don't forget, if you want to come to Atlanta in February, it's blackwealthandblockchain.com. blackwealthandblockchain.com will lead you to the Eventbrite page. And from there, you can see the agenda. We're going to have a great time. We're going to tokenize a piece of Black art. And we are going to talk about smart contracts. We're going to talk about data management. We're going to also have a brainstorming session with my vision of we can get 10,000 Black people to put $100 each in, then we would be able to fund our own blockchain not just blockchain companies, but tech companies, period. So we're going to have that conversation as well. And we're going to have Krista McFarlane, who is the head of Patientory, as our keynote speaker. She's very excited to be coming in as well to speak with us. So blackwealthandblockchain.com. Okay, so thank you so much. I wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah if you're Jewish, or whatever other religion that you serve. And God bless you. And we will see you officially in the new year. Have a good evening, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Leroy.
Thanks, Leroy.